Okay, so now ituloy natin yung discussions sa ating subject, Engineering Economy. So before we discussed things about present economy studies, and alam naman natin na we're dealing with a lot of costs as well as yung ating mga kinikita dun sa mga certain economy studies that we used to compare. In this next topic, we will be discussing things about how money is affected by how money is affected by time. So it simply means na for a certain amount of money that you have, what happens, say, after 1 year, if you try to invest that money, or kung gusto mo naman is nagpahiram ka ng pera and then pinatawan mo siya ng interest, so magkano kaya yung pwedeng makuha mo after some certain time, syempre of course after some agreement with the one that you're lending your money with. So we start by defining what a capital is. Alam naman natin by definition that capital, it refers to wealth in the form of money or property that can be used to produce more wealth. So in short, sa Tagalog, we call this the puhunan. Alam naman natin sa isang business, para makapag-start, kailangan natin ng puhunan. Kapag meron din tayong, just say for example, yung mga sa ating, kahit sa inyo, sa grouping, sa limbawa, ganun. Kapag sinabing yung kagrupo mo walang puhunan, parang, ibig sabihin parang wala siyang ambag, in engineering economy, yung capital natin is, ito yung starting amount natin usually. And then, ginagamit natin siya to produce more wealth. I mean, yun yung goal, to produce more wealth. Pero sometimes, nangyayari is, hindi tayo nakaka-produce. Pero iba namang case yun. Pero the goal is just to produce more wealth from that certain amount of money. Now, the capital is not usually money, ha. Pwede rin tong, let's say yan, property. For example, halimbawa, meron kang prutasan, no? And then, ginamit mo yung prutas na yun para magbenta. So, basically, yung prutas na na-starting mo, yun din yung capital mo. Kasi, property mo yan. And then, from that, nakaproduce ka ng certain amount of money. So, pwede mo rin sabihin na yun yung capital mo. Now, this engineering economy will be focusing on the extended periods of time, especially yun sa mga, for example, depreciation or may gradient tayo. So, consider natin lahat ng mga case na ganun. And then, it is important for us to understand what we call the cash flows or the concept of equivalence when we're dealing with this certain amount of money that is increasing or decreasing depending on time. Now, what we use, alam naman natin na for chemical engineers, we usually use yung ating material balance. So, meron tayong mga inlet-outlet, ganyan, arrow-arrow. So, sa cash flows natin and then sa engineering economy, we'll be using this cash flows diagrams as well as sa mga table. Pero mas focus tayo dun sa paggawa ng cash flow diagram. So, let me just read this last sentence here. So, in addition, viewpoint is an essential feature of cash flow diagram. So, later on, malalaman nyo kung bakit kailangan natin mag-set ng viewpoint. And these are most of the parts of the cash flow diagram that we'll be using. So, una dito, or any computations that we'll be doing in the future. So, the first one is the interest rate per interest period. Now, I want to emphasize that there are a lot of different kinds of interest. So, meron tayong interest sa subject. No? Meron tayong interest sa nominal interest. Meron tayong, let's say, effective rate of interest. So, meron tayong interest rate per interest period. So, ito yon yung ating tinutukoy dito. Interest rate per interest period. So, mas mag-guess nyo siya later on pag ginamit natin itong interest rate per interest period na tinutukoy natin dito. Na yung N, it is the number of compounding interest periods. So, in short, kung ilang beses ito nagko-compound, then yun yung number of compounding periods. So, halimbawa, meron kang 10 years. I mean, let's just say you have 1 year na lang, 1 year na. And then, you're trying to pay your amount, certain amount, for every 3 years. So, basically, yung N mo is hindi 3, kundi 4. Kasi basically, the N here represents the number and not the certain number of years. So basically, dun lang tayo sa number of times that you're actually paying or receiving money. So yun yung dapat ma-emphasize natin dito. Though, this is usually translated into 2 years, no, or months or whatever. but it's not basically the number of the length of the month that you're trying to pay the whole period, but essentially this is all about the number of times you're trying to pay. So yun yung usually ibig sabihin nito. Now, the present sum of money is the equivalent value of one or more cash flows at a reference point in time called the present. So, itong present money, actually wala tayong technically Tagalog dito, but imagine yung pera mo at hand. So, ganun na lang sabihin natin kung magkano yung pera mo ngayon. So, yun yung usually parang present money natin. Now, yung future sum of money or the future amount or future worth, so yun yung mga pwede ng terms. Now, this is the equivalent value of one or more cash flows at a reference point in time called the future. So, in short, if you have this certain amount of money at present, so kung ano naman yung, halimbawa, meron ka, let's say 1,000, and then you're trying to invest that certain amount of money, and then what if we go to the future and then kuhanin natin yung certain amount ng money na yun at that certain future. So, yun yung future amount niya. In short, ano ba yung parang magiging amount na to after some n, let's say, after some m years or whichever is the case. So, A, if you're trying to pay something, for example, you're paying at a certain amount of a certain, let's say, kumuha ka ng halimbawa, kumuha ka ng sofa and then you're trying to pay, let's say, quarterly, annually, monthly. So, yung end of period payment natin, which is usually the same sila. So, if this is a uniform series, performed or paid for every certain amount of interval na same lang din, then we call this the annuity. And the representation for this is usually letter A. So, later on, mas makikita nito kung ano ba yung ibig sabihin ko dito sa mga INPFA na to sa ating cash flow diagram. Now, to construct a cash flow diagram, let me just read this first paragraph here. The horizontal line is a time scale with the progression of time moving from left to right. So, in short, you start always with left. Para siyang ito ay parang imagine yung Cartesian coordinate plane, then siya yung positive x-axis. So, start ka 0, then to certain positive x. So, from left to right. And then yung period natin, so yung period again is not the number of years, but it is the times you pay for every year or quarter or month. So, well, the label is of course in terms of the years or quarters or quarter month or whatever is the case, or pwede rin days. Pero, yung period is kukunin mo depende dun sa certain number of times that you have to pay. So, ayun, nakalagay dito. Can be applied to intervals of time rather than points on the time scale. Note, for example, that the end of period 2, okay, so ito yon, is coincident with the beginning of period 3. So, when the end of period cash flow convention is used, period numbers are placed at the end of each time interval. So, sa problems kasi sometimes, meron diyang i-specify na you're paying this certain amount at the end of every 3 months. So, in that way, alam naman natin na if you're paying at the end of every month, then it is more convenient to use this time scale wherein you start with 0. So, kapag first month mo yan, so in short, kung nilagay ko dito yung unang arrow down ko, so siguro maglalagay ako dito ng drawing, no? So, what if, in a case-to-case basis, your problem says that you're paying at the end of every month. So, basically, dito kayo mag-start ng unang arrow down natin, or depende sa viewpoint natin, pero later on na yun. So, yung unang arrow down is the end of first month. So, doon ka nagbayad, no? Dito kasi, if you're trying to pay for the first or the beginning of the month, then you start with the 0 point of time. So, ganun lang siya. Parang you always start with this beginning and then you end up with the end of the month. Okay? So, that's it. And then the arrows signify cash flows and are placed at the end of the period. Ayun, ito pala yun. If a distinction needs to be made, downward arrows represent expenses or negative cash flow, and upward arrows represent receipts or positive cash flow or cash inflow. So, yun nga, pag meron tayong downward, para, di ba, pag sinabi natin down, parang negative side siya. So, any amount na ginastos mo or nilabas mo for the sake na for example, capital mo siya, 'di ba? Ilalabas mo rin siya. So basically, yung any amount na nawala sa iyo, we usually represent it as arrow downward. And then any amount na makukuha mo or marireceive mo, for example, kumita ka. So basically, at the end of the month, and then may kinita ka. So yun is a positive cash flow kasi nga dumagdag siya sa certain money mo. So with that, we represent that in terms of a positive cash flow, an arrow going upward. Now, take note na itong arrows na to, upward, and then compared to this is kind of magkaiba silang sukat, no? Now, we usually do that to emphasize na meron tayong varying amount at a certain monetary value. Kasi since mas maliit to compared dito, alam naman natin na itong nakukuha ko dito sa point na to, which is diba positive to, mas maliit yan compared sa in-invest ko dito sa first or the beginning of the period. So yun yung idea dito kung bakit mas mahaba tong arrow na to kaysa dito.
Ooh, that's kind of small.
But
yikes.
Halimbawa, yung difference mo dito is 1 million. And then this one is just, let's say, 1K. So, hindi naman porket gusto mo i-represent yan, kailangan ito extended hanggang baba, lumabas na ng monitor na screen ko. Anyway, so, hindi naman yun kailangan ganun kababa para ma-represent yan. It's just that you can always represent that as a longer arrow para ma-represent lang na mas malaki yung tinutukoy mo doon compared dun sa isa. Kasi this will be essential mamaya dun sa ating tinatawag na gradient para mas mag-guess nyo kung bakit minsan may meaning yung haba ng arrow natin. Okay, so yun muna. So again, dito sa una natin, if it's end of the period, you start your arrow at the end of every period. So 0 lagi yung beginning natin. And then sa pangalawa, for any cash flow na positive, so we usually represent that as a upward arrow, and then the negative or the cash outflow is downward. Now, for number 3, the cash flow diagram is dependent on the point of view. So ito yung napaka-importante rin, no? For example, the above figures were based on the cash flow as seen by the lender. So ito yun, lender's viewpoint. And then if the direction of all arrows have been reversed, the problem would have been diagrammed from the borrower's investor's viewpoint. So in short, this is the lender's viewpoint. So imagine, ako yung lender, so ako yung mapera, no? And then, sige, bibigyan kita ng pera for now. So kaya meron din tayo dito na cash outflow at the beginning. So mapansin nyo dyan, siya ay cash outflow at the beginning kasi naglabas ako ng pera, which nawala na ako ng pera, so basically downward siya. And then at the end of the first period, makaka-receive ako ng gantong certain amount kasi supposedly manggagaling yan sa'yo and you're paying me for the certain amount that I've given you. So parang ganun yung idea, no? Now, if this is a borrower's viewpoint, no? Nasaan ba yan dito? So, pagka borrower yung viewpoint natin na ginawa, no? So, basically, kung borrower's viewpoint siya, halimbawa, nanghiram ako sa'yo, no? So, would you do something like downward arrow if you are the borrower of this money? So, syempre, kung borrower ka, dapat ang money mo, ang arrow mo should be upwards dito sa certain amount na na-receive mo yung money. Kasi basically, nagkaroon ka ng pera eh. Halimbawa, meron ako sa'yo ng 5,000. So, yung 5,000 na yun, hindi ko naman yun nirelease eh. Yung 5,000 na yun, hiniram ko sa'yo. So, even though it is just an utang, so, I'm indebted for that, pero na-receive ko siya as in cash siya, napapunta sa akin. So, basically, yun is still your money na ngayon. So, parang positive yung money na yun. And then, of course, when you're trying to pay for this certain amount na hiniram mo, so, yung mga annual payments mo na magkakaroon is pababa na yun lahat. Kasi, yun nga eh, you are supposed to pay that a certain amount that you've borrowed. So, in this case, hindi na siya lender's viewpoint. We call this the borrower's viewpoint. Wait, ang hirap magsulat. So, borrower's viewpoint. Okay, so, ito na yung borrower's viewpoint. So, technically, if you try to draw the diagram for the borrower's viewpoint, then it should be the reverse of the lender's viewpoint. So, yun lang naman yun, no? And I think that's all for our cash diagram. So later on, when we solve problems here na kailangan ng cash diagram, though sometimes kasi hindi naman kailangan ng cash diagram eh, pero kung kailangan natin ng cash flow, then gagawa tayo, no? Now we start with the first of the many money-time relationships, and this is one of the easiest na mga relationships. So that will be the simple interest. Now, kapag yung ating interest rate can be correlated in a way na linear yung ating interest rate. Of course, ibig sabihin lang nun, depende siya sa, of course, yung principal, given na yun. Pero depende lang siya din sa interest rate. So, pagtaas yung interest rate, pagtaas din yung interest na makukuha mo, as well as yung number of interest periods. Kasi, this is kind of different when we're talking about the other kind of interest. So, this is the simplest one, yet hindi ito masyado ginagamit na ngayon kasi basically sobrang simple niya, hindi niya na a-account yung kasi diba, halimbawa, kung meron kayong credit card or debit card, credit usually. So, alam naman natin na minsan, pag ginamit natin yung credit card, may certain amount ka dyan na utang, diba? So, if the principal is just correlated in a way that you're using this formula, parang napaka hindi tutubo technically, parang hindi masyado profitable yung mga companies na yon na nagpo-provide ng credit card system kasi halimbawa hindi mo siya agad binayaran, 'di ba? Pag hindi mo binayaran agad yon, dun lalaki yung pataw ng interest instead of just being a certain amount fixed na yan na hindi siya mababago. In the same way na if you're trying to pay for that at a certain amount or at a certain time na hindi pa siya due, 'di ba, mas lumiliit yung interest rate. So basically ito yung effect nung other type of interest. It's just that syempre basic to, so kailangan natin siya maintindihan muna. So under ng simple interest is that this formula, no, I is equal to PNI. So you just have to multiply your principal amount, or ito yung pinahiram mo or binaro mo, and then the number of interest periods times the interest rate per interest period. So, ang goal dito is malaman mo kung ano yung interest period na ginagamit natin. For example, annual interest rate to. So, you have to convert this number of interest period in terms of year. Or kung halimbawa, yung iyong I is monthly rate mo given. So, you have to convert this N in terms of the number of months that you're actually paying. So, in short, if you have your future amount, that is simply the present worth plus the interest. So, basically, yun lang naman yun, no? And we have two of them. If we have an ordinary simple interest, then that is computed based on the 12-month of 30 days. 12-month, 30 days tayo na basis, and then 360 days per year. Kasi ano lang naman to 30 times 12. So, this gives us 360 days a year. Now, pag exact, so alam naman natin na pag exact, kung halimbawa 30 days yung isang month na yun, then 30 lang. If it's 31, then 31. So, all in all, meron tayong 365 days. Pero if leap year, meron tayong 366. So, ito yung sinasabi natin, exact simple interest. So, I think before we start solving for the compound interest as well as this and the rest of the problems, I think we should be solving muna yung ating example dito ng simple interest. Gawin natin na kada discussion, then solve muna tayo. Okay, so the first one here is hopefully kaya ko siyang masolve dito sa napakalit na space na to, and I think kasya naman to, no? So what is the annual rate of interest of 265 if 265 pesos is earned in 4 months of an investment of 15,000? So again, for the investment here, 15,000. So technically, ito na yung ating P, 15,000. Okay? And then yung ating interest, ito yung ating nakukuha na interest. So basically, 265. So parang after 4 months, you're able to get 265. So, expect nyo na medyo malaking interest rate ito kasi 265 na kukuha mo Although, hindi ko sure pala. Parang maliit lang din. Pero syempre, dun sa mga by experience, sobrang liit talaga sa mga bangko compare dito, no? Sa problem na to. Anyway, so, sabi natin, ang formula for interest for simple interest is PNI. So, by the way, paano ko ba nalaman na ito is simple interest? So, for problems like this, napakasimple lang nung kanyang construction. Hindi niya sinabi na compounded, something like that. So, pag walang mga clues for compounded, yung mga ganun na terms, so we usually think of this as a simple interest problem. So, kung ang kailangan natin is annual rate of interest, so I need to find this certain value of I. So, with this, we have 265, that is equal to 15,000. Okay, so pwede kayong maglagay ng mga comma sa money kasi para mas makita nyo ng maayos kasi okay lang naman yun since money naman pinag-usapan natin. And then for our N, so yung alam natin na N natin is 4 months. But then again, sinasabi ko nga na itong this is not actually yung months mo na given lagi, no? This is the interest period na you're paying. So if you're trying to find the annual rate of interest, so that is basically per year. Okay, so if you're trying to convert this N in terms of a year, then that should be something like 4 divided by 12. Okay, so I hope it makes sense now kasi this one is 4 months. And what would be that annual rate of interest when you're trying to use this N in terms of 1 year? So that is 4 over 12. That's actually 1/3. It's just that you have to represent that in terms of year kasi we're talking about annual rate here. So you have to find I. So yun lang yun. Just copy this and then do your your shift solving or just divide this. So you should be able to get a value of 5.30%. Okay? So ito yung ating maging interest. Now, interest rate is usually represented in terms of percentage. Now, for this one kasi makukuha nyo dyan is in decimal. So, guess nyo na naman yun na you have to multiply it by 100 just to get this certain rate of annual interest rate. Okay? So, had this been, what is the annual rate of interest? If it is, what is the, let's say, quarter? Actually not quarter, but for example, what is the rate of interest every 4 months if 265 is earned in 4 months on an investment of 15,000, then you don't have to divide this by 12 kasi your I would be the exact interest that you have kapag 4 months yung ating usapan dito. So, yun yung difference nito, no? Now, for number 2, a loan of 2,000 is made. So, agad na ito ay letter P, 2,000. Okay? For a period of 13 months, and then, so ito ay from January 1 to January 31 of the following year at a simple interest rate of 20%. So, what future amount is due at the end of the loan period? So, in short, itong simple interest rate na ito na yung ating I, no? And basically, pag tayo simple interest rate, we usually have to convert this in terms of year. Pero, how many years ba to? Now, for this problem, simple interest rate lang, wala sa atin sinabi na siya ordinary or exact. So, pag ganitong case kasi, we usually assume na this is an exact simple interest rate. So, with this, let's try to evaluate kung ano ba yung ating mga number of periods dito, no? So, basically, kung meron tayong 1 year, kasi diba 1 year na agad to kasi 13 months to So, kung nag-start ka ng January 1 up to December 31, so you should have this 365 days. Okay, so meron ng 365 days. So, sure na yan, no? But how about the number of days from January 1 again to 31? So, ang gagawin mo lang dun is you add the days for that. So, this gives you additional 31 days. Okay? So, additional 31 days. So, this gives you the total number of days per year, which is 300 in terms of days pala. So that is 396 days, and then your N is should be divided by 365. So basically, this is the converted form of the exact simple interest rate in terms of the number of period. So yun. And then so since we have this na, we need to find F. And again, yung F natin is sabi natin is P plus I based on the problem itself. So, you have to add your principal, which is 2,000, and then your interest dito. And then, di ba, alam naman natin na yung interest is P and I. So, with this, you can just simply say na this is 1 plus NI. Okay? Kasi you can factor out P here, and then, alam naman natin yung I is P and I. Okay? So, with this, pwedeng gamitin natin itong F na to. So, ang F natin would be F is equal to, siguro dito ko na lalagay sa unahan. Wait lang. Sige, dito na lang muna. So, F would be equal to the principal. So, that is 2,000. Okay? And then 1 plus, your N is 396 divided by 365. And then yung I mo is this annual rate of interest, that is 20%. So, that is 0.20. Okay, and this will give you a value of 2,433 point, wait, 43.9726. Okay, so this is your future amount. So we could just use this space na lang para isulat ano, 2433.9726. Okay, so sulat nyo na lang yan sa handout nyo. Ito yung sagot. Kasi gagamitin ko tong space na to for this problem. Okay, so hopefully nag-guess nyo siya, no? Ang hinahanap dito sa future amount, kasi ito, this is interest lang. So alam naman natin na yung future amount na yon, kapag meron kang present amount which is 2,000, pag lumago yun, di ba? Add mo lang yung certain interest at this 13 months. So that would give you 2,433. Now, you might ask, bakit hindi na lang sir ginamit yung 13 divided by 12? So, basically, kaya hindi natin siya ginawa is that meron tayong certain days na hindi na-account dito. Kasi if that's the case, then 13 over 12 will give you around 1.0833. But if you're using the exact, it will give you 1.0849, which is technically mas ano siya, mas mataas yung mga mong future worth. So siguro kung halimbawa ako yung investor and then I'm trying to entice you to invest on this plan. So, syempre, gagamitin ko yung ganong tactics na hindi lang 13 months. So, you have to multiply that in terms of days para mas makuha mo yung pinaka-eksaktong value ng iyong future worth. But then again, if you've answered this 13 over 12 instead of using this, probably I'll also give that as a correct answer kasi di naman kasi din in-specify dito kung siya is exact simple interest. So, pwedeng that's another way on solving this. Okay. Now, if you borrow money from your friend with simple interest rate of 12%, fine. So, ito simple interest rate pero hindi sinabi kung sa atin is, ano ba siya, exact or ordinary, no? Find the present worth of 20,000 which is due at the end of 9 months. So, in short, after 9 months, kailangan mong mabayad yung hiniram mong money, which is 20,000. Pero, syempre, hindi na yung 20, technically hindi na siya 20,000 sa end ng 9 months pag tinake mo yung future worth niya. So, then again, let's just use this. So, I is equal to 12%. Okay, so 0.12 to. And then, find the present worth of, yung present worth pala is yun na hinanap natin. Then, 20,000 yung future worth niya. So, this will be F is equal to 20,000. So, mali pala yung una kong basa. So, which is due at the end of 9 months. So, with this, yung 9 months na yun, you can directly use yung 9 divided by 12 or you can just use your 9 times 30 divided by 12 times 30. Now, the difference of using this 9 over 12 dun sa these days na given is just that hindi kasi natin dito alam kung anong month tayo nag-start. For example, kung halimbawa nag-start tayo February, then we end up with after 9 months ng February na yan, diba, your sum would be something like 28 plus 31 plus 30. So this gives a lot of discrepancy kung halimbawa nag-set ako ng isang certain amount of days na nag-start sa January. So yun yung point dito na hindi natin pwedeng gamitin itong number of days kasi we don't have enough much information para masabi na this is the number of days that we should be selecting. So with this, let's just find P. So kung ito yung formula ng P from this F, then therefore your P would be equal to F times 1 plus Ni raised to negative 1. So, ibig sabihin lang in-over ko na to, no? Mas maganda lang isulat ganito para hindi na ako mag-over. So, with this, your future worth is 20,000. Okay? And then 1 plus, your N here would be, nasan ba 9 months. So, that is 9 over 12. Okay? And then we have your simple interest. So, annual yan. This gives you this 0.12. So, P should be equal to, let me just compute for it. I forgot negative 1. So, the answer is 18,348.6239. Okay. So, in short, you borrowed this certain amount, 18k lang yung hiniram mo, around 18.3 yung hiniram mo. Pero syempre, dahil nga may interest na pinataw sa'yo, which is 12%, so at the end of 9 months, 20,000 na yung babayaran mo. Pero ito kasi depende yan sa annual payments mo na gagawin, no? Kung paano mo siya babayaran. Pero dito kasi sa ating mga simple interest na pinag-usapan, we're just talking about dun sa ating future and then present amount of money. Wala pa tayo dun sa pag-itan ng mga payments na yon. So ito is just to make you understand na ito yung ating money. It is a time-valid problem. So basically, as time progresses, it's either decreasing or increasing depending on the certain scenario. And of course, depending on the interest rate. So, yun na lang for first 3 problems. Okay? And then, how about the next one? So, I think this is the last for the simple interest. Now, for this problem, we're given by the simple interest rate. So, determine the exact simple interest rate on 5,000 for the period from January 15 to November 20, 2016. I think this should be if the rate of interest is 22%. So, in short, given na tayo ng ating principal dito, which is 5,000. So, this is your 5,000. Okay? And this is your principal. And then, to find I, kasi interest lang yung kailangan natin kasi ito sabi, exact simple interest. So, ito lang naman ating formula, P and I. But the tricky part here is that we need to find the N, which is depending on this, the number of days here. And then, yung ating rate of interest is 22%. So, therefore, I is equal to 0.22 lang naman. So, ano ba yung ating yung ating N? So, just have to compute for the number of days from January 15 and then November 28. But remember, in this case, it is a leap year kasi 2016 to divisible by 4. So, I want you to pause the video para mag-compute muna kayo kung ilang days to. And then, yun. So, go back here after you've already computed for the number of days. Okay, so hopefully nag-compute kayo. The number of days, so the sum of all the days from January 15 to November 28, 2016 is, of course, so 300, that is 318. So hopefully ay nakuha nyo siya. So usually sinasama natin yung last day dito, no? So yun, at saka yung period ng January 15. So with this, we can now solve for the interest. So the interest is equal to 5,000 times N, and N is actually 318 divided by 366 kasi we're talking about leap year here. So wag niyo kakalimutan yon. And then 0.22. So this gives you an interest that is dito na lang, the interest is equal to 955.7377. So this is your interest for number 4. So fully I gets nyo na ngayon yung mga simple interest. So it can be exact, it can be this ordinary simple interest rate. Pero once na hindi sinasabi sa inyo if it's ordinary, by the way yung number 3 ordinary ginawa natin kasi hindi ni-specify sa atin kung ilang period yung ating kung ano yung certain duration ng date na kailangan natin. Pero when it is given yung mga dates, usually we use the exact simple interest. And the future amount of your present amount would be that your interest added with the principal amount that you have. So hopefully ay malinaw na tong 1 to 4 na to using this, or yung ating topic na to using this 1 to 4 problems.